Yo, what's good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top starts of the week for Week 9 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and here we go. All right, we're going to go position by position, starting with quarterback. We're going to talk about Justin Fields, quarterback of the Chicago Bears. Obviously, he started the season pretty poor, but since then, since about Week 5 or so, he's been really picking it up. He has been on fire. According to Fantasy Pro scoring, the quarterback 13, 8, 5, and 5 the last few weeks. And then in week 9, he gets the Miami Dolphins, a game that it has some sneaky shootout potential if Justin Fields shows up and puts up points. And if the Miami Dolphins with Tua, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle, if they put up points, this could be a back and forth, could be a high scoring affair. But either way, it's a good matchup. Justin Fields has been hot. He's been running the ball actually a little bit. You can see his rushing yardage totals have been very, very good. Even gotten in the end zone the last couple of weeks. So Justin Fields is a strong quarterback one play in week 9. I do apologize. I did leave my little face cam border on right there. I do have a gaming channel as well. T Ultra. Go subscribe. Link in the description. But there you go. Now we're in fantasy football mode. All right. So moving forward with our second and final quarterback start of the week for week 9 of the 2022 fantasy football season. We're going with Tua of the Miami Dolphins. Listen, he has the weapons. He's been playing pretty well for fantasy. You can see kind of his box score lately. Week 8, it was a cake matchup. He finished as a quarterback one on the week. Week 9, on paper, the Bears have been a little tougher against offenses for fantasy purposes, but I think with the weapons that Tua has and the losses that the Bears have had on defense with trades and stuff, I think that Tua should be able to exploit this matchup. Like kind of the same argument I said with Justin Fields. It could be a higher scoring game. So I like both quarterbacks on either side of the ball in this matchup. And I think Tua, he's always going to be a solid option. And this season with the weapons he has, he does have that week winning ability each and every week. So I would put him in your lineups. Now we're going to move on to running back. And this one is pretty easy, guys. It's Aaron Jones, running back of the Green Bay Packers. He's had an up and down season, but the last couple of weeks he's been very, very great for fantasy. In week 7, he had the running back 4 overall finish on the week, 24.1 points in half PPR. And then the following week, I expected him to do a little bit worse, which I guess he did technically do worse, but he was still great for fantasy. And he had 20 carries on the ground, still saw 5 targets through the air. It's looking like he might be taking over this backfield instead of it being as much of a split between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And in week 9, the Packers get the Detroit Lions. Listen, the Packers offense has been struggling, but the Lions is the perfect team that the Packers need to get their offense going again. And Aaron Jones should have no problem exploiting this matchup. He is a locked-in running back one. He's basically a must-start. Now we're going to move on to our final running back start, and that's going to be Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. I made him a start last week in week 8, and he was a little disappointing. But for the season, since he's taken over the job as the lead back for the Miami Dolphins, he has been amazing for fantasy. And week 8 against Detroit, it just so happened that Tua scored all the touchdowns. It is what it is. Obviously, you can't predict where the ball is going to go each and every game. But he gets another good matchup, and he still should see a ton of volume in this game in week 9 against the Chicago Bears. He's seeing a handful of targets, it looks like, here and there. He's seeing, around 15 carries a game, pretty much every game since week 4. So he's definitely very startable, and it's a good matchup for fantasy running backs. So start Raheem Mostert with confidence in week 9. Now we're on to wide receiver, and we're going to go with Christian Kirk, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This game as a whole, I think, has a lot of potential. If Jacksonville can put up points on Las Vegas, and if Vegas can keep up, I think that this can be a sort of a higher scoring game than it might look like on paper. And just to kind of pick one piece out of this game, obviously you're going to be starting Josh Jacobs as well. But I'm going to talk about Christian Kirk here, wide receiver start of the week for week 9. It's an amazing matchup for the Raiders. The Jaguars do kind of spread the ball around a little bit, but Christian Kirk is probably the most likely to see a healthy amount of targets, and he has had some big games in the past this season. So in an amazing matchup against the Raiders in week 9 at home, I like his chances of having a solid game for fantasy with an opportunity to have a big game for fantasy if he is able to find the end zone a time or two. So I like him as a nice, solid wide receiver to play in week 9. All right, y'all, now it's time to talk about Josh Palmer, wide receiver of the Chargers. He is going to get a huge opportunity in week 9. First and foremost, guys, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, the top 2 receiving targets for the Chargers, are both out. Josh Palmer should see a ton of targets in this game in week 9 against the Atlanta Falcons, who are a great matchup. Their defense can't really stop anybody. So Josh Palmer, this is pretty much an opportunity combined with matchup play. All right, so there's really not much more to say than that. He is a very nice play if you have a bunch of people on bye weeks or you're missing players with injuries. So if Josh Palmer, if you got him off the waiver wire or if he's still there, he's a nice guy that you can scoop up and start with confidence in week 9. Now we're going to move on to tight end, where we're going to talk about Zach Ertz, tight end of the Arizona Cardinals. I love him in week 9 against the Seattle Seahawks. First of all, it's a great matchup for tight ends against Seattle. In week 6 against the same defense, he saw 10 targets, caught 7 of them for 70 yards, had 10.5 fantasy points. He was a tight end 1. He gets that same matchup in week 9. And obviously, once DeAndre Hopkins came back, I thought Zach Ertz was kind of going to take a back seat with Hopkins and Hollywood Brown on the field at the same time. But right when Hopkins came back, they lost Hollywood. So Zach Ertz is still a big part of this offense. He's been good for fantasy as well. This isn't just some streaming option. This is pretty much an every week start. And in week 9 against Seattle, he has a bunch of upside. So I am playing him with a ton of confidence. Pretty much a top 3 play. Now that we know what happened with Goddard, you'd probably have to rank him number 3 because Goddard's going to be, probably number 1 or 2 on the week. But Zach Ertz is a top 3 tight end play in week 9. We're going to go with Isaiah Likely, tight end of the Ravens. Listen, I don't like to just give you obvious calls. Sometimes it might seem obvious to some people, not to others. But there's tight ends I like more than Isaiah Likely, but I'm just going to bring him up because he is going to have a new opportunity this week that he hasn't had this season, okay? This is a guy that is going to likely start for the Baltimore Ravens. Last I heard, Mark Andrews is doubtful for Monday Night Football, week 9 against the Saints, so likely should be able to get his start. You might say he is likely to start that game. I'll be here all week. It's a good it's not a good matchup. The Saints are a pretty good defense, but again, the opportunity is there, and tight end is a weak position. So, for example, I lost Njoku to injury, and I had Dalton Schultz on my team, and he is on a bye week. So, at the beginning of the week, I had Dawson Knox on my team, where I'm just praying for a touchdown, and even if he gets one, he's probably still going to have under 10 points. Once I heard Isaiah Likely was probably going to start, I scooped him up, and as of now, I am starting him. If Mark Andrews does play for some reason, he'll probably be limited, so likely should still see the field. And if, Mark Andrews does start and you don't want to roll with Likely, you could pivot to Jawan Johnson, tight end of the New Orleans Saints, in that same Monday night game. But it seems likely that Likely is going to be the starter. And in week 8, Mark Andrews did leave that game early. I was actually at this game in Tampa Bay. Fun fact. But Mark Andrews did leave that game early. So Likely saw a bunch of work, saw 7 targets, went 6 for 77 and a touchdown, tight end 2 on the week. So I'm not saying he's going to replicate those numbers, but he will have a bunch of opportunity. And this is just a name that should be on your radar. So I would fire up Isaiah Likely if you need a tight end to start. Gerald Everett, tight end of the Chargers, is going to be our final tight end start of the week with no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams. It's probable that he gets used quite a bit. It's sort of the same argument that I gave with Josh Palmer. They got to throw the ball to somebody. Eckler will run the ball a little bit. He'll see his targets, but Everett should be involved. And at the tight end position, it's a pretty shallow position. So Gerald Everett is definitely a strong start for week 9. It's a good matchup. He should see tons of opportunity. And even before, when, Mike Williams was in the lineup, he had tons of productive weeks for fantasy. He's not this guy that each and every week is going to put up, consistent numbers, sort of like a Travis Kelce. But I think in week 9, this is one of those weeks where the opportunity and the matchup are there, where he should see a healthy amount of targets, should have some solid yardage, and it would not shock me if he gets it in the end zone. So Gerald Everett is a very strong start at the tight end position for week 9. So those are all the starts of the week. Really quickly, we are going to recap our week 8 starts of the week just to see what went well and what didn't go well. So I made Tua a start of the week last week. He had a very good week for fantasy, and actually these are the overall rankings on the week. I meant to sort it by position. So Tua was the number 1 quarterback on the week. I also said to play the Saints quarterback, whoever that was, and that was Andy Dalton. He did get the start, and he was the quarterback 16 with 7 points in a game where Kamara had 3 touchdowns. I don't think they were all rushing. I can't remember for sure. He might have thrown one to Kamara, but regardless, that Raiders defense It's bad. It's just dreadful. It looks like Kamara had, oh, he caught 2 touchdowns. So that's how that worked out. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. At the running back position, I talked about, sorry, I do have a little bit of a cough. Apologies for that if I cough at all. I'm sorry. My voice sounds kind of weird. But Kenneth Walker was a start last week. Not an explosive game for him, but he did get in the end zone. 11.7 points. You'll take that. And I more so brought him up, not because of like the matchup or anything. It was more so just like, hey guys, Kenneth Walker is pretty much an auto start at this point. So, and even this week, even though I didn't talk about him specifically in this video, I would be starting Kenneth Walker pretty much under any circumstance. Raheem Mostert, we kind of talked about him. He didn't have a great game for fantasy. It just so happened that Tua scored all the touchdowns, which is fine. We love Tua here. Tony Pollard, listen guys, he was the running back 4 on the week with no Ezekiel Elliott in a great matchup against the Bears. So that's the matchup that Raheem Mostert is going to get this week. He had that many points in half PPR, bro. There were some huge performances. 5 players above 30. Holy smokes. I didn't even realize that. That's crazy. What a week that was. We're going to move on to wide receiver. I made DeAndre Hopkins the start of the week. Obviously, at this point, he's probably an auto start. I probably don't need to bring him up anymore, but I just brought up Hopkins sort of like with Kenneth Walker to be like, hey guys, put him in your lineup. He's pretty much an auto start. He was the wide receiver 2 on the week, 27.9, just behind A.J. Brown, who had 3 receiving touchdowns. Just crazy. Olave, this was one of our few sort of not great calls. Kamara, it was just the Kamara show. He still had 5 for 52. Receivers are always going to be a little inconsistent, but you'll take 5 for 52 on a down week. Like, you know, there's some receivers on their down weeks, they go 2 for 14. So still not a great start of the week, but Olave in that type of matchup, I'm going to recommend starting him every time. Higgins was a start of the week. He only had 3 receptions, but turned into 49 for 1, 12.4 points. And then I also talked about Tyler Boyd. He also only had 3 catches, but turned it into 60 for 1, 11.3 points. So I kind of brought them up last week just to kind of capitalize on the Jamar Chase absence. And those 2 should still be solid moving forward. And then last week at tight end, I recommended Irv Smith. I don't remember when he left in this game, but he only had 4 for 28. So that was a bust. And my Minnesota Vikings did lose Irv Smith to injured reserve, but they did trade for my other start of the week from last week, who was TJ Hockenson. Listen, he only had 3 for 75, but that was good enough to be a top 10 tight end. The tight end 10 on the week, 9.5 points. So I guess we'll count that as a dub. But yeah, tight end is pretty gross. So now you can kind of see why a guy like Isaiah Likely has potential to climb these rankings for week 9 and be like a top 5 option if he has a good game. So with that being said, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 100 subs and we're very close. So that would be greatly appreciated. And I will talk to you guys later. Peace out and good luck in week 9.